Hey, good morning, everybody. Uh, I guess you can hear me. You can hear me okay? Yeah, all right, cool. Okay, so quick introduction. My name is Krishnan. I'm the CEO at Geektrust, and welcome everybody to our session on how to write clean code. I'll give you a quick overview about Geektrust. I'll tell you a little bit about the job opportunities. I won't take more than 5 minutes, and then I will hand it over to my co-founder and friend Dhanush to take the rest of the session. Okay. So I've been in tech for about 18 years now. And for about 10 of those years, I spent at this company called ThoughtWorks, left ThoughtWorks and started Geektrust about 7 years ago. And we've been running Geektrust for about 7 years. So when I started 7 years ago, companies used to hire people only based on resumes, right? And the truth is not all of us have great looking resumes, including me. When I started, my resume wasn't great. I didn't study at a top college. I didn't work at a top company. So getting job opportunities, forget job opportunities, getting interviews itself was hard. So we started Geektrust with the idea that people should be able to find the best opportunities based on their real world coding skills. This is for developers, right? Like, I don't think you need to I don't think you need to be able to have gone to a great institute to be able to write code. Anybody who has the interest and the passion for writing code can write good code. There are so many learning opportunities. I saw some of you mention Next Wave. There are so many people. There are so many boot camps out there that who can help you. There are so many YouTube videos out there who can help you. So what Geektrust tries to do is, if you can write good code, we guarantee that you will get interviews with good companies. So that's the aim. I just saw a question: is degree needed? Degree is also not needed. There are certain companies that will tell us that, like the larger companies will obviously tell, hey, you need degree, you need this mark, etc. Smaller startups, right? As long as you can write good code, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what your whether you have a degree or not. In fact, the lead UI developer at Geektrust is a chartered accountant. He's not even an engineer. So what is good about our the space we have chosen, all of us here, which is software development, is you can use your skills to find jobs. The past doesn't matter. How you did in an entrance exam 5 years ago, 7 years ago is irrelevant today, right? Can you write good code is the question. Now, this is hard. I'm not saying this is easy either, right? Writing good code is not necessarily easy. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of studies to understand how to write good code. And when we talk to companies, we specifically talk to companies saying that you should hire developers based on their ability to write clean code, not just good code, clean code. So there is code that you write that can get the output. I think most people who can write basic code can get their output. It is not a problem. But what is clean code then? And why is that important? I have realized after spending 18 years in tech, in the real world, when you start working, you are not going to write software programs from scratch. Just whether you join a Flipkart, Amazon, or just a startup or TCS, wherever you go, what you will first do is you will start fixing bugs. You will start fixing support issues. You will work on some small features. And to do that, you must be able to understand code that others have written. Right? You have to understand this. This doesn't get talked about much, but this is 95% of software development, if not more, is this. You have to understand the code somebody else has written, and then you have to build on top of it. And what is important now is when you write code, you have to write code that somebody else can read and understand. Because somebody else will come later, correct? You write code, you fix bugs, you create features. That code will be read by somebody else and they will build on top of it. So the ability to write code that others can read and understand is called clean code. That is what this session is all about. And considering most of you are new to software development or graduates, this is a little bit, I'm telling you upfront, this is not super easy. Some of the concepts in this session, you may not get it completely. Note them down, and we have help docs which will help you understand it more. And there are lots of content in the internet around this as well. What Dhanush, our intent with this session today is to give you a perspective. right, is to give you a sense of direction as to, hey, this is what we mean by clean code. After the session, you're going to be able to write clean code, right? You'll have to put practice into it. You'll have to read up more about it, but this will give you that direction. All right. So this is why clean code is important. When we started 7 years ago, not companies didn't think it was important, right? We worked with startups, small companies, 10-member firms, 15-member firms. Today, we work with TCS, we work with Intuit, we work with Accenture, we work with Siemens, we work with ThoughtWorks. All the large companies, all the big ones, including startups, they tell us that, hey, we agree, clean code is important. As of today, there are 150 plus open positions for freshers at Geektrust. Fresher hiring is something we started 6 months ago, and we have 150 plus open positions. And the key to unlocking these opportunities is being able to write clean code. And when I say this, put your effort into it, because it's not just about writing code. In the interview also, you will be asked about this. In the interview also, recently I gave one of our clients, we gave code that some of our fresher candidates had written, and they couldn't believe that freshers had written it. They're saying this is not possible. How can freshers write such good code? And that is where credit is not to us. Credit is to a lot of the boot camps that you folks have come from as well. Many of them are doing a great job in helping you understand how to write good code. What we are doing is we are saying, prove it. Once you prove it, we will put your code and resume in front of companies and help you to the best of our abilities. Last 2 months, 50 plus offers have come from Geektrust for freshers, ranging from 5 lakhs to 15 lakhs salaries. All sorts of companies are hiring from us, from a Siemens to startups to product companies, and all of that. I'll pause now. I'll stop now. I want to give Dhanush the full time to take the session. Do ask your questions on chat. We will respond to you probably at the end of the chat. Okay. Sorry, at the end of the session, I'll select the questions and I'll answer them. Please also look at our help docs later, not now, but our help docs. Like I saw somebody had pinged earlier saying, I'm not able to submit the code. So we have a document on how to submit code, which is called our build. And there are links also that you can read. Geektrust is a platform for practitioners. We expect that you will put in effort. We will not tell you do X and Y to get Z. We'll give you hints, we'll give you direction, but the effort has to come from you. Okay, I'll stop now. Dhanush and I have started Geektrust together along with Sneha, who's the third co-founder. Dhanush and I were roommates 17 years ago. So we started our careers together. We were roommates 17 years ago, and we are still, then we went our own ways and we worked at different companies. We came back 7 years ago to start with Geektrust. So I'll hand it over to Dhanush, and he still writes code. I've not written code in many, many years, but Dhanush loves to write code and he loves to teach. He actually used to teach at NIT as well a long, long time ago. Dhanush, over to you, man.
Hey, thanks, Krishan. And thanks for reminding me about my teaching stint. So it's very long time ago. So yeah, like Krishan said, we will just cover what clean code is, and then I will walk you through the help docs we have and show you some code which is bad and how it can be converted to good code. So let me share my screen. I hope you guys can see this.
Yeah, I can see it, Dhanush.
Yeah. Right. So, so what is clean code is a question which a lot of people ask. In a simple sense, clean code is something which any developer can understand and read and try modifying that code, right, easily. As in, doesn't make sense to understand a code for 2 days and then changing it. But if there is a bug which is a priority bug, and then you should kind of look into it, understand it, and then quickly change it, fix the bug, and then push to production. That's how normal work happens, right? Now, why does clean code matter, right? Like Christian said earlier, someone might have left a company and a new guy might have joined on a project, and most of us, like none of us, work on a greenfield project unless and until you are starting up something on your own. It is very hard to get into a code base which doesn't exist and build from scratch, right? It can happen, not that I'm not saying it will not happen, but majorly you will work on stuff that is already there, right? So what happens is you have to look at some code base which is existing there and try to understand and try to maybe fix that bug or introduce a new feature, right? Now, typically in a software industry environment, you might not have much time to fix the bug, especially if you're working on high-end fintech solutions, right? Banking systems. I had a friend who used to do. I mean, I still have a friend who used to do fixes on the production box directly because they used to work in fintech space, and they cannot afford to lose time. So the fixes are really should be really fast, and you need to understand the code and fix it fast. So that is why you have to ensure that the code you write is cleaner and easy to maintain, and any developer can work on it, right? Anybody who sees that code who knows the language constructs, of course, can work on it and improve it. And when you work on that code, it is also it's your responsibility also to leave that code in a better place, right? It doesn't make sense that if you uh, added a new feature and but nobody else can understand that code, then it doesn't make sense to have that you know doesn't make sense to do that thing, right? The code is already good. I mean, it's neat and clean and all that, but someone is introducing a feature which is not understandable. So it is equally important for the existing developer and the new developer that is coming to work that clean code matters, because you have to read and understand the code and work on it, right? Now, let's get into the most important part of how to write clean code, right? Typically, I mean, we have been reviewing code for almost 7 years now, out of which around 5 to 6 years, it have been completely manual. And we have seen a lot of uh, good code and bad code, average code, worse code. So considering all those, uh, how we write readable code is one of the thing is, you know, um, always have meaningful names for all your methods, functions, variables, and classes, right? If you have something like I'm taking taking a leaf from Java coding here. If you have something like class A, doesn't make any sense, right? uh, int x doesn't make any sense, right? So what happens uh, when somebody writes like that, right? For example, you have class student and have variables like n1 and n2, which the developer thinks it is the first name and second name, right? But nobody knows, right? So it is better to have something like class student and which has two variables, first name and last name, like explicitly written. The variable name should be first name and last name and not just n1 and n2. The next one is, you should try to avoid magic numbers. I have an example on that. I will show you what magic numbers is. And, if there are too many conditional statements, right? Like if A or B and C, like that, your condition is going to be a huge condition. It can happen. There can be huge conditions, condition checks in your, work. So it is always better to extract those into a function or a method and give it a proper name so that people will understand, right? So that's what you have to do. I'll just show you an example which makes sense. So in this case, anybody can understand what this is. There is a p variable p which is looking for length greater than 4 and less than 16, and then if it is true, then do a handle click, call handle click method, right? This is not really expressive. So what we do is we can refactor the code into this, right? So this 4 and 16 here, sorry, this 4 and 16 here, these are the magic numbers, right? When you add any hard-coded values, be it string or int or float values or real numbers, any numbers, when you add it to your conditional checks or parameter calls, sorry, method calls as parameters, people won't understand what it is, right? So this actually means this is the developer meant that this is the minimum password size and this is the maximum password size. So the whole code is refactored into this. It says there are two constants declared so that the magic numbers are gone here, and now it has a meaning, it has a variable name, it has a constant name, and people can understand that it's minimum password size and max password size. Then I wrote this whole condition, the AND condition, to to this with a name to that function called isValidPassword, and inside the isValidPassword I returned the condition where it's greater than min password size and less than min password size, max password size, sorry, right? Then that isValidPassword I use it here in the if condition, right? And instead of handle click, see, clicks can be from anywhere. If you're writing a JavaScript application, there can be like button clicks, simple text clicks, a lot of things can happen. But write exactly what is going to happen. If it's valid password, login, not handle click, right? So now this 3 lines of code, even though it took like around 10 lines, 10 to 12 lines, it is easier to understand and easier to read, and people can come and change. So let's say the code, let's say there's a bug where max password size is not working, that this condition is not working correctly, and they want to reduce the max password size to 10. So instead of looking at code where it has to reduce, you can just go and edit this const max password size equal to 10 and your code will work, right? So that's how it is easy to understand and read and extend and all those things. So that's what if you look at the code on the right hand side, what Martin Fowler has said is anybody can write code that computer understands. So I don't know, I might be very old here, but we had a lab in college where we have to write assembly language program into microprocessors and all, right? And that was just ones and zeros. Nobody understand anything, right? So anybody can write code that computer understands, but good programmers will write code that human beings understand. So that is that's the most important statement about clean code, right? If you are going to write clean code, write code that others can understand, not just you or the computer. Right, let's look at another complex code here. So this is basically to filter users whose name or email or role contains a search string. And straight away, you can see that there are this terms which are quite similar, right? Users.filter, but the name here name, again users.filter, but here is email, here it is role, and then there is a concatenation which is happening. All these are then pushed into a filtered queue. Instead, use the languages functionality, right? Instead, it can be refactored to user.filter, which is this is coming from JavaScript. So JavaScript offers these methods like filter, and then use user.name.includes and user.email.includes, right? So typically, complicated code means that you don't understand that thing well enough to make it simple. So see the difference between these two, right? There are too many filters, then finally one push to the array. These are not needed if you know the language well. You can just use languages constructs pretty much and then make it simple. So after the naming conventions, magic numbers and all, try to once you're done that, try to make your code simple, right? Which means you can write shorter methods. Typically method length can be around 10 to 12 lines, right? Or a good measurement is whether it will fit your screen, right? That's another measurement but people will do, but 10 to 12 lines is what is typically considered as a good method length. So try to fit all those methods within that. Try to break down longer methods into smaller methods. So I will show you that after this session, how it is done. Okay. Next is modular code, right? What is modular code? Is where you structure your code into different components and layers, right? So I don't know whether you guys might have heard, there is this concept called 3-layer architecture, right? Or 4-layer architecture, or it can be 2 layers also. Essentially, what it means is there is a data layer, and then there is a service and controller layer, and then there is finally the UI layer. So that is a typical web application will have these 3 things, right? Now, based on this, you can structure your code into layers and components. So if you are working on a web application, you can just split your code into models, which are basically your domain models, which are your classes which represent the domain. For example, I'm just giving another example. Let's say you're doing a implementation of a student database, right? In schools, there are student databases, right? So you have a database, let's say Postgres, you are using relational database. You have a table called student. You have a table called teachers. You have a table for classes, things like that. Now, your class, the data model will be called class student, right? There will be something like class teachers, right? So be very specific when you define the models. Then the next step is, if you want to access that database, you come up with a data layer, which will have all the CRUD operation. CRUD is create, read, update, delete operations for that student class, right? So you have a save to database, you have find from database, you have update and delete. Once that is done, you have a service layer, which will incorporate multiple business logics, right? So coming back to the student database again, let's say I want to get all the students who are in class 10th who are absent in the last week, something like that. Okay. Now that query you may not directly write in the data. It might be a little complicated. I'm just assuming. So that logic of finding that you can write in service. This example I'm saying may not be correct, but I'm just giving you a direction, right? So if you have some kind of a complex logic which you need to implement, then and you have to get that data information from multiple tables, you write that in service layer, and then you front it with a controller code, which is again I would keep it in service itself, and show it up in the view. Okay. So that's how you should structure it. Okay. Now, there are, if you look at these two diagrams, there are two ways in which it is structured. One is where all the model entity so entity repository service controller, everything is in one package, which is called guest. The other thing is where all the controllers are together, all the entities are together, all the repositories are together. These are the different styles, right? On the left hand side is called stack style, and the right hand side is called entity style, because the separation is logically done. Whereas on the left hand side, the separation is based on layers, right? So this is again a choice. This depends upon what you work on, what your structure is. I have worked on both cases. I find the right hand side little better. But the left hand side is a better case in which you have a project which is used by multiple people, and people want to extract only models or only entities. So in that case, the left hand side is better. Whereas on the right hand side, everything is clearer and little more cleaner than thing. So, but yeah, it again depends upon what project you are into and how it is structured. Right. Now, the most important part of clean code is, there are these principles called solid principles. Out of that, S represents single responsibility principle. Okay, which essentially means that if you declare a model, if you come up with a domain model, it should essentially do only one thing. Or if you have a class, it should essentially do only one thing, right? So in this case, there's a class book which has functions get title, get author, turn page, print current page. Okay. Now, printing is not book's function, right? Printing is someone else's function. It can be done by a printer, which can be a dot matrix printer or a laser printer or anything. Book's functionality is to give book's content out, like the title, author, turning the page, for example. Printing the current page is not book's functionality. Printing the page is printer's functionality. So how do we refactor this code? We can write a interface, or we can even write a direct printer, which if you know direct class, like an HTML printer, if you know that the printer is HTML, and use that here, and then use the interface printer in the book. I think I missed out that here. Sorry, I'll fix that. And use the print page functionality to print it, right? So book will just pass on the information to HTML printer or plain text printer or whatever printer it is, and that will print it. So book is not responsible for printing the page. It is the printer's responsibility to print the page. The other another principle is don't repeat yourself. Okay. When you this is essentially looking at duplicate code in your own code base, right? So if you have written something like this, and you have to get there are two methods, where one, you have to get articles for a user, and then you have to get comments for a user. Okay, let's say this is your web page. Like this is your media site, right? Where there are a lot of articles, there are a lot of authors, and each author will have comments underneath their page, right? So this is that. Now, the code is like this, where you see the fetching of the user is repeated in both. Same code is repeated in get articles for user and get comments for user, right? So only thing that differs is this part, right? This the last part, whereas this is the same. So what I will do here is I will write a method get user, which will get the user information from the user ID, and then based on that, that call is made here. So the duplication is reduced now, right? The core duplication has reduced, because otherwise, let's say, in the sorry, here, let's say the URL for getting articles for user changed, right? Getting the user changed. So it becomes user v2. Now, if it was this style of coding, you have to edit it here and here, right? Instead, if it's this style of coding, you need to edit it only here. So it has become v2. So this methods, like get articles for user and get comments for user, doesn't know what exactly changed. They just call get user as it is. Obviously, of course, the contract and data which is coming back should be same. That and all has to be taken care. But this is a better style of writing than the earlier one. Right. So let's look at since we came from duplicating, let's look at reusability. Just 1 second, excuse me. So reusability means, typically avoid duplication in your own code, okay, which means try to write reusable methods, classes which has appropriate behavior and attributes. Again, refer the single responsibility principle earlier, and then do not repeat yours, just which I showed you earlier, like do not repeat the same code again, copy paste it. That's very easy to do, but it's very hard to maintain in the long run. Then write better methods and functions to avoid duplicate code. Now let me cover the Geektrust challenges, and then I will go to the help doc. So we look at correctness, build, readability, and maintain readability, object modeling, and unit tests. These are the 5 badges we refer. Correctness is obviously your code should be running and working correctly. Build, I will let you know what that is. I have a slide on that. Readability is everything what we talked so far, right? Your code should be clean, and object modeling is also about clean code, which has, which a class should have proper naming. It should have it should be properly encapsulated. It should have single responsibility, things like that, right? And unit test is where you write unit test cases to test your code before you actually do the correctness check. Now, build. Typically in software projects in companies, right, there are huge code bases, a lot of developers checking in. How do you ensure that the code is not breaking, right? It is not breaking because somebody introduced something, right? Some new feature was added. So that is where a build tool comes into picture. So build tool is something that helps you compile your code, execute unit tests if there are any, and finally creates an executable of the code, right? Any program we develop, the software we develop, once it is finally deployed, it is not the code that you are deploying. It is an executable that you are deploying, right? You might have seen, you're downloading some IDE from the internet. Let's say you downloaded Eclipse, it's an executable. They are not giving you the source code, right? Of course, open source is different. I'm just telling, let's say you bought Microsoft Word. They are giving you an executable. Though you double click on it and then um, continue the, click next, and then install, right? So similarly, your code has to be compiled and an executable has to be created from your code. So build tool is the one which takes care of all these things. So if you are developing in Java, Maven and Gradle are used mostly, predominantly Maven and Gradle. There are people who use Ant, but Ant has kind of become obsolete now. It does because Maven and Gradle do much better stuff than Ant. Ant was historic when I started my career in 2003-4. Ant was there, but after that Maven came in. Maven could manage dependencies also very well. So Maven and Gradle are the two top build tools, and we support that. For Python, there is a tool called pip where you can manage your dependencies and create executables and all. If you're working on C Sharp internally has .NET, so .NET build will take care of it. Go also uses inbuilt Go tool. So you see these newer programming languages have all this built in automatically, right? Node.js has npm. Ruby has an external build tool called bundler. Ruby is quite old, so Ruby doesn't have inbuilt stuff. You need to add either bundler or rake, right? And I can share you this in the chat. All the instructions to create a build, how to go about creating build tools are available here for different languages. So you can just follow that, and maybe before starting up implementing, read upon what Maven and Gradle does, what npm does. So you can do all those things before you start implementing. Okay, let's look at the help docs, and I will go through a coding problem which we had retired long time back, and then you can I will show you how it is different, how bad code is different from a good better code, right?
And Dhanush, one
Yeah,
quick question since you're on the concept of build, right? One question is how do we use build tool for front end like React and all?
right. So for React, Angular, and all the new frameworks, build tool comes on its own. So if you download your React app, create React app project, right, and then try to create a new Angular project or a React project, it is inbuilt, and then just you do npm install and npm start, your project is up and running. So that's all we need. And if you want to add any dependencies, you have to update your package.json file and then run the npm install again, and then that dependency is in your project. Let's say you are doing one of the projects and you want a date filter, for example, and date filter is an external dependency. So you add the dependency to your package.json, or you can use npm install minus save dev and then give that path of the dependency. It will update the package on this. So either way, so all these are available inbuilt for all the front end frameworks. For backend, you might need to add on your own. Okay, so let's look at some how to earn some badges. Now, these are some of them we covered earlier, but the usual suspects of readability are like, one is there are long methods with complex logic, right? And some of them have if conditions, multiple if conditions, instead of, coming up with classes and their own behavior, right? So look at this code. This is a code which we had for our older problem called cricket. and this is this person has declared the class as tiebreaker, and there's a main method, and if there are too many if else's, for loops, multiple for loops, if and nobody will understand here what is happening, right? There's again for loops, right? So it is everything. The code might work, but everything is in one single uh, method, which um, which is very hard to understand and read. If this was a there is a fix in this, how do you fix this? How do someone else fix this? It's hard, right? So how do we write it? Out of this code, I figured out that there is a team that is batting and team that is bowling. There's a match, right? So then I added smaller methods which will do nothing but the same things. Print result, match is there, team class is declared. So I delegated the I delegated the actions or behavior to that appropriate classes. So main thing you have to do is you have to identify these classes which are correct for you for the problem what you're doing. Now poor variable and function names, which I again mentioned earlier. If you look at player SCR, I don't know what that is. It is a very short formish thing. Name of player's team doesn't make any sense. Player object array doesn't make any sense, right? So instead, what we'll write is player score, which means that score of that player, right? Is playing. It's the player playing, right? Team name instead of this. Player object array is nothing but just players, right? Just use players. Again, magic numbers which I touched upon earlier. If password length is greater than 7, right? Instead can be greater than mass password. Uh, Incorrect language conventions is one another thing where you know um, when you're writing code in a specific language, write to try to write code in that language's conventions, right? So in Ruby, a constant is like this, right? Whereas class you write like this. Don't mix and match. Don't write class name like this in capitals, right? And why it is important is because it adds up to the readability of thing. You follow what that language says, and so that it make things understand. Another thing is camel case, right? Java tends to use camel case while Python tends to use snake case. So don't use snake case in Java and camel case in Python, right? So smaller things, but it does a lot of impact on the whole clean code concept, because somebody who is a Python expert will come and see the code, and then it's seeing in camel case, they will look at they will see that okay, this is not great code. Right, code is not modularized. I touched upon this earlier also, but this is a smaller uh, you know example. So here what is happening is if the person is out or something, we set the status as out, and then we do the commentary here itself, right? There's a commentary. Instead, you can write a generic method which will take the player status and the commentary. Okay, so this is a method I wrote, and you pass whatever the ball count, player, and score, whatever is the parameters needed, you pass to that method, and then so the code looks neater here than here, right? Which essentially makes it clean. So let's look at object modeling. Readability, some of them I have covered. Now in object modeling, obviously the first and foremost important thing is you haven't identified the correct objects, correct data model, right? You have written the code in a procedural way. So like this, there is a main method. You wrote everything here, which is the same code I showed you earlier. But instead, come up with classes like game, team, innings, and then scorecard, player, which makes the whole thing little better. And this, I think we have put it in everything in one thing because we want to show. But typically these should be in different files, which will where you write short, compact methods and classes, right? So with this way, you have identified the right classes and right behavior. Okay. Classes created without any behavior or very less behavior. These are, there is a concept called value objects in the software, where these classes carry only data, right? That is fine. You can have value objects if you're writing a software like that, where value objects are needed at the front end by the HTML pages you are writing, right? That data, like let's say student, name, marks, class, all those information can go as a value object. That's fine. But when you are writing core domain models, right? Write it which has some behavior onto it, which has some responsibility onto it, right? If you look at this, there's a class batsman, and batsman doesn't do anything. Like it returns a name and returns the probabilities, right? But if the class is written a little more better way, where the batsman has a play and you implement the logic to play the balls and score the runs and all those things, so that means the batsman has a little more behavior than the earlier one, and it's a better modeled one, right? So so value objects are okay if you're writing as a response for HTTP methods, or right, like database domain modeling, like if you're using Hibernate and all, you can have value objects which are only having data. But it's essential to have behavior if you're writing a domain model classes, right? Classes that doesn't represent real world. So whenever you come up with your domain model and classes, it has to represent real world, right? Now, for example, playing cricket, it's not a real world object, right? Match lost, it's not a real world object, right? So match lost, instead of match lost, you can write match as a class, right? It's a noun, and it makes it feels that a class match is encapsulated and it is correctly done. And lost and the match lost, that lost part, it can be a behavior inside match which says status, right? So match, so whether match is won or lost. So so that is one thing, how you can modify that. Now, wrong behavior in the class, right? This is something which is correctly which I have mentioned earlier with respect to SRP, where a book was given multiple responsibilities, a totally different behavior, right? Like printing. Now, if you see here, in this case, there's a cricket match, and there is a print per ball commentary for the match, right? There is handle and print wicket commentary. Instead, the commentary itself can be handled by a different class, right? So instead, what you can do is you can have game, team, and then they are playing. The team has play, whereas here this match has everything, right? There is a play, There's a game ended, commentary, right? Uh, should change strike or not? Should change strike or not is not matches uh, behavior, right? It's a player's behavior or a team's behavior, maybe. I don't know. But at least it is a player behavior, right? So those things should be encapsulated into correct classes and should have appropriate behavior. Breaking encapsulation, another important thing in with respect to object modeling is where you know you are you are allowing other classes to change your one class, right? So if you declare your variables as public, right, or it has setters and getters, someone else can change this, right? Someone else can get hold of player class and then change the name of the player, right? That should not happen. Instead, um, instead the state of the class should be changed by behaviors. So you have a class batsman, and the runs are changed here, right? You change the run and then return that run, so that only when the play happens, the runs are changed. Otherwise, someone else can use a set method and then change the run score. So your scorecard, if you're implementing a cricket scorecard, then score, goes for a toss. Only when the batsman plays, the score should change, right? So, so that is why people say don't use setters on your class. Don't use public variables, because they can be directly accessed and changed. I'll skip law of Demeter. I'm not skip, but law of Demeter is little too much for you guys, since you're just getting into the development. Essentially, if you see methods, things like this: a dot get b dot get a dot method b dot things like this, right? It's not a good practice. Instead, you should appropriately use that, and then so appropriately refactor. So player dot update runs on player will call teams update runs instead of doing like this. Static methods. Okay, a lot of people use write actual behavior as static methods, and static methods are actually bad. Not bad in the sense that static methods are defined at class level and not at object level. So you do not have a instance of when you get an instance on object, you do not have that method on that object. It's not the static method is not actually the object's behavior. It's a class's behavior. So what happens is it takes away the object modeling concept altogether away from the class. So instead of having static start here, you can just write something like this, and instead of calling game.play, you can write new game.play, right? You create an object of it and then start it. This we covered one class doing too many things SRP. Yeah, so that is mostly about it. And yeah, I think I covered. We have help docs for earning build badges as well, and all the examples are here. You can look at it. And this, I think we have a link. Yeah, for language specific documentation, we have a GitHub page where you can see like how do I, if you are working on Java, how do I create build correctness and just for Java, right? So we have given everything. You can just go through it and then I don't have anything else. I think that's it mostly. Short of time as well. So that's all I have. So it is not easy. You cannot just start on doing this. Read up on stuff. Understand what clean code is. There is a book called Clean Code by Robert Martin. It might help. You can get it and read. And then maybe look at, like Krishnan said, YouTube videos of how clean code is done. Maybe you can go through our help docs to understand how things are done. Yeah, essentially that you should write code which someone else can understand. That's the bare minimum. Okay, I'm stopping my share. I'm handing over to you, Krishnan. You can, if you have questions, we can.
Sure. Thanks, Dhanush. I would like to
just give a minute. Okay, I just need to close the door. I will come really fast.
Okay. Yeah, so I think I've tried to handle most of the questions that have come. If you have any unanswered questions, do mail us, help@geektrust.in, and we'll get back to you. Now, the final thing is, like I was mentioning earlier, we have about 150 open positions for freshers. And in the last 50 people we placed, salaries have ranged from 5 lakhs to 15 lakhs. So opportunities are there. What I would recommend is you can go to geektrust.in, look at the coding problems and select a problem. I recommend for backend developers, I recommend the water management problem. And for front-end developers, I recommend the admin UI problem. So take a look at these problems. If you have already started with some other problem, that's fine too. But if you have not yet started, these are the two problems I recommend. Go take a look. And we have interviews actually that can start from Monday onwards. There are companies that are ready to interview. So if you can submit by Sunday night, you take your time. I'm giving you extra time because I think it will take spend time, go through the documentation that we have, polish your code well, submit it by Sunday night. By Monday, Tuesday, we will review the code. And for those who have cleared, we can start lining up interviews from middle of next week itself. That's mostly it. Once again, thank you so much for coming. And clean code is a concept that takes time to master. Even experienced developers take time with it. But if you put your effort to it, there's nothing that will prevent you from getting a good score. Okay. So all the very best. And thank you so much for coming once again. Bye. Yeah, for folks asking where to get the coding challenge, you can go to geektrust.in and take a look. Geektrust.in, the site will have. Yeah, somebody has said I made a request to evaluate manually. Please send a mail. Please, I would say, can you send one more mail? Send it to help@geektrust.in with your email ID, and we can take a look. We will also send you the recording of this session too. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye guys.